Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, everyone out there. My name is Nika Sherelle, and this episode of the ItCast is All I Want for Christmas: How to Negotiate the Pleasure You Want. Our guest tonight is Spyce. She is a love empowerment coach, and her work focuses on helping women transform their relationships to love through self-discovery and communication. Spyce, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I've been hearing about this show for a while. We've been wanting to collaborate for a while, so I'm really happy to be here, and thank you both for also having us on the show. Let's see. Tell you about myself. That's such a broad question. I never know how to answer it. I started my life, I guess, as a performer. I was somebody who always just enjoyed being out in front of people, but also really inspiring people. I was also really blessed when I was younger that my mom was somebody who was really all about communication, about clear communication, and about being open about sexuality. And so I learned from a very early age that anything that you wanted to do sexually, as long as it was healthy and good for you and you were communicating, that it was a good thing and that it was an okay thing. So I grew up without a lot of sense of shame around these things. And so that was really helpful for me. You know, I always wanted to do something in the field of sexuality and empowerment. So I've gone through many different stages with that. And now I work as a coach, working specifically with strong women, but also I've recently been expanding to work with men and with basically any person, any human being, about how to get what you want, gain clarity so you know what you want, ask for what you want in a healthy way, and really just get clear on these spaces that we have inside of ourselves that can be so confusing because we just, we're never really given very much information about how to know where our feelings come from and how to navigate all of that. So that's my passion, one of my passions.
Yes, thank you. So you brought up a very specific point in your description there, which was shame. You know, your mother raised you in a space where being able to communicate, talk about consent and not have it be a shameful thing. And the thing I've discovered since I started having conversations with people about pleasure negotiations and talking about it was I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed. I don't want people to know, what I'm into. And there's so much fear with that level of connectedness. I really want to open this conversation up to both of you, everyone here in the room, to talk about what do we know about pleasure negotiations just from the who we are as people standpoint, not the experts. Just to get a test of the room here.
Well, I think a lot of what we know in terms of pleasure negotiations has just been fundamentally, don't hurt me. If I say stop. It's not really. It hasn't really gotten to a pleasurable place. It's gotten to a, do you respect me? Number one in this space, and I think a lot of it has to do with the narratives that are created around who young boys are, who young girls are as they're growing up. So we're creating this tension, and it's not a lot of space for love and pleasure to be discussed because it's such a taboo thing. So I think we culturally have to get to that place. There aren't a lot of places where we talk about that in a growing up space. There isn't a age that you get to unless maybe you're married or you're over 28 or something. People don't start to look at you funny, culturally. But underneath it all, we know it's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We're not laying a groundwork for it.
100%. There's not a framework for this kind of conversation. Yeah. And right now what we have is rooted in protection and fear. And, there's historically around sex and sexuality, that's what we've had, especially being in female bodies.
Yes.
And it is important to have this conversation with everyone, men and women. And we hold the space for each other, most definitely. You got anything over there to say?
Well, I was going to ask you to repeat the question because I wanted to make sure that I was speaking from, either experience or just what I think.
Yeah, so the question is what is your understanding of what a pleasure negotiation is?
Yeah. I think, honestly, this may be the second time I've ever either had that term used, or even just had an intentional conversation about it. So I think when I think about pleasure negotiation, it to me it sounds like trust. It sounds like empowerment. It sounds like um, discovery. Like all of those wrapped in one. And the first thing I think about is what it would be like if, especially, I mean, I was gonna say especially young girls. I think boys and girls too. So let me just leave it at all of us. Like if we all had those 3 points as an introduction to our bodies and what's possible with our bodies and how you can feel and how, you know, um, what it would be like to share space with someone that you share a feeling for or something like that. But those things aren't really talked about in that way.
Yeah.
Well, even though I think children are usually taught things like, you don't let anybody touch your body without your consent, and don't talk to strangers. We're also given a lot of kids are given mixed messages too. Even though some parents are starting to talk about this differently, but there's always a thing of like, okay, go sit on Uncle Joe's lap,
Come on.
and like go let whoever give you a kiss. And, kids are not allowed to say that. So we're taught from a very early age that we don't really have sovereignty over our bodies.
Yeah.
And then once you start to explore sexuality and you go through puberty, you learn that in order to get what you want, you're just going to have to put up with a lot of stuff that you don't want.
Right.
And so I think that so then that's like being a kid. And then as you get older, I think it just gets worse and worse because we see so many times where well, I want to have an experience, so I'll just put myself out there, and whatever I can get is whatever I can get.
Yeah.
And so there's no real room for us to really even ask for or to feel that we can ask for.
Yeah.
And then there's so many messages about that just asking for what you want is selfish. And you can't just go in there and expect that this person's going to give you what you want. You have to be willing to negotiate, but you have to be willing to give up something in order to get what you want. And I think that that's a real issue that makes a lot of people put up with, specifically women, put up with experiences that they're just not really that into. But men also, because men have their own conditioning where they're taught well, you love sex, so any kind of sex that you can get, you're going to be down for it.
Right.
And I've talked with a lot of men who have felt pressured also in sexual situations because they're expected to want it. So I think on both ends, in all parts of society, young, old, men, women, there's just so much conditioning around sexuality and around the concept of wanting and desire and being able to ask for in a healthy way and being able to actually receive what you want and all of that.
I like that you said mixed message because I think about a point where for girls it's like there's a way you have to conduct yourself, be wholesome, and then for boys, there's this target to accomplish or win. And then overall, boy or girl or however, and I'm a '70s baby, so I'm just coming from that standpoint. But then there's also this sex is bad, don't do it, stay away from it, it's for nasty people, and yet all of us are here by way of,
Yeah.
Right.
or to say that and then to go back in your mind and think about how your parents must have navigated certain types of relationships, or at least enjoyed sex at some point, but we don't really hear that part. So when I think about the mixed messages, I think what would it be like if, our parents were to speak about it in a different way, or those that we look up to would speak about it in a different way and from a vulnerable place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you both hit on something very deep, which is that space of like supposed to, and like, being responsible not only for yourself, but what someone else thinks and feels, or what your parents did or didn't teach you. And it's like we have all these notions that, if I'm a woman, I'm supposed to do things this way and I'm supposed to be ladylike. If I'm a man, I'm supposed to be tough and like I'm supposed to take the lead. And then we end up with all this shame from not living into that cultural stereotype of what the world says we're supposed to be.
Or supposed to want.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about like pleasure negotiations, what they are and how they work. I know that for me, historically, as a queer person, I've seen pleasure negotiations come up in the queer community as well as the BDSM and kink community when you're having conversations about, okay, what are we doing here? Because it might not be intercourse.
Right.
And then, you have more questions than you have answers, and that's when it becomes a discovery. Now, in the, heterosphere is what I'll call it, like things tend to be very automatic. You have a penis, I have a vagina, we put these parts together, and,
everybody's supposed to love it, like it, is great.
Right. Right. And if you don't like it, it's something wrong with you. And that's not how pleasure works. There's so many different nuances, ways, parts of the body types. Our bodies change as we age, as we grow, whether or not we're hydrated enough. There's so many things. So Spyce, talk to us about like what is this? How do we get into this lingo and this space confidently?
Well, I think for one thing, it's really important to allow yourself to have the space to basically be fluid with your desires. A lot of times people want to get caught up in this, like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And a lot of times that comes from a place of fear that somebody's not going to actually give you what you want, or they're going to take something that you don't want or something like that. And so, I think it's really important when people are going out there, and especially when people are first starting to sort of explore their sexuality, to allow yourself the space to explore and to not feel like you have to do any particular thing. There's a really great term that I think Annie Sprinkle actually coined.
Oh,
yay!
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Shout out and Beth.
Yes.
Eddie and Beth. So she coined a term called metamorphosexual, and I just love that terminology because it's like, it's basically just what it sounds like. It's like you're metamorphosizing through your sexuality, and sometimes you try something. Sometimes you think, oh my God, like it would be the most amazing experience if I had ... and then you get ... and you're like, actually, I don't like that, or actually, I like ... So giving yourself that space to be fluid, I think is really important. And then I think, because the biggest part to getting what you want is really just being very clear and knowing what it is that you want. And the way to get to knowing what you want is that sometimes you just have to explore and try a bunch of different things in order to get to a place where you know what you want. So I feel like that's like kind of the first step in negotiation, is just getting that clarity of knowing what it is that you want.
I love that.
Is there more?
No. Thank you. Did you have more?
I always have more, but let's hear what other people have to say.
So, I completely agree. One of the things that's coming up is just this idea that I find myself constantly in this space of discovery. I'm actually laughing. I'm a little embarrassed because you said so many things where I'm like, oh, that's right. I didn't know I liked that. So I'm having a few flashbacks here. Y'all give me a minute. But as I got out and I began to discover, so when I got into kink, I was like, I'm a top. Like I don't like pain. I don't like to bottom. And it was really a protective mode because like I don't like to have people like in my space wanting to feel like they have control over me, things of that nature. So I was hyper defensive. And then a few years of like kind of like looking from the edges and seeing what people were up to, I was like, actually, I really like it when girls tell me what to do. Like a lot. And I had this total switch of like who I knew myself to be when it came to connecting with people and communicating. And I'm like, okay, so now how do I actually talk about that? How do I share that with someone? Like what then becomes the benefit of having this self-discovery and like sharing this self-discovery with a person that you may not really know?
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to something that we were talking about before, which is the shame.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that is what really, really plays a part in people not discovering what they want. And then even when they discover what they want, not asking for what they want. There is so much shame in, like I was saying before, just even the idea that you're going to ask for what you want. We put all of this, just like benefit into the idea of like be a strong person, ask for what you want, be assertive. And I'm a very assertive person. I feel like I've gotten most of what I want from being assertive and asking for it, but it's really, really hard, especially when you're a strong person who is used to getting what you want, to ask for it specifically in these realms of relationship and sexuality, because all of that runs so deep with our self-worth. Sure, like you could be strong person, strong woman, be like, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to tell these people, this and that and what they should do, and I'm going to make them respect me. But it's a very different thing to then go home and be like, and now I'm going to make, my partner respect me.
Right.
And now I'm going to tell my partner, okay, this is exactly what I want, and you better do this for me. And of course, nobody wants to be in a situation with somebody where they feel like, I'm doing, like, this person's doing this just because they want to make me happy. Like, you want to be in a sexual situation with somebody where both people are equally turned on and they're doing things because it feels really great. And so, I feel like there is always this fine line when you're navigating these kinds of sexual relationships with finding people that have the same interests as you and being able to like just kind of speak what you want and be okay with how it's received. And when it's not received, like if you're like, what, I really want to get my whatever is played with, and someone's like, okay, well, yeah, I don't like that. Being able to not take it like it's a personal thing, like, oh, well, they don't like me, and being able to realize everybody has a different thing that turns them on. And of course, when you're in a relationship with someone, you're in a committed relationship, you may want to try certain things for the other person, and you might be surprised. You might metamorphosize, and maybe you have something different than what you thought that you liked, and you discover that while playing with your partner doing the things that they wanted you to do. And that's wonderful when that happens. But also sometimes that doesn't happen, and I think it's okay for people to be like, we're in a great relationship, and there's these certain things that my partner doesn't like to do, and I don't necessarily need to make them do that. And, maybe depending on how your relationship works, maybe you can get that in other places. Or maybe it's something that you say, okay, well, you know what? Maybe it's not something that you need as much as you thought you did. But it still doesn't take away from the idea that speaking what you want is really important and really necessary to do, regardless of how it's going to be received or not.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, you really hit me in the heart there, because I was like, shame. Yeah, that even sitting here in this station, having this conversation, I'm like, I was totally like, I'm embarrassed, I'm flushed, like
Mhm.
all these experiences came up, and I'm like, oh, we have these conversations to end shame. We have these conversations to break the silence and have the healing come to the forefront, and that comes through communication. So, I mean, really, that is the benefit of having this practice, and that is exactly what stops people from getting what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not being able to talk about it and not being able to express what they want, and I think that happens so much more frequently, is that people they just don't tell the other person what they want. And it's like there's this idea that I feel like young women and women in general are taught that, like, and people in general, if the other person loves you, they're going to know how to read your mind.
Yes.
Right.
If they can't read your mind, they don't love you. Or they weren't paying attention.
Or they're not the one. Or they aren't, you know what I mean? If it doesn't happen naturally, and we've all had natural connections with relationship disasters.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, it's not about that. And so, like, really digging deeper and being more curious is certainly a way to get to that discovery. But also it's a way to give freedom to just be okay with the exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you said about not being hooked on what the response is.
Yeah.
Do you have any words of wisdom that you generally share with, your clients about starter conversations, or maybe some things to think about to break the ice mentally on how to mention some things, or have conversations around what pleasures people want to experience, or even just personally how to have that exploration, because a lot of it is so mental.
Yeah. And can I just throw in adding safe space to that conversation as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it first starts, like you said, with like a self-exploration, because if you're not clear in yourself about what's going on, and then you try to bring it to somebody else, first of all, you're going to feel a lot of shame, like we talked about, and you might be very easily willing to just sort of give up on the conversation because it feels too hard. And if the person says like, oh, well, I'm not into that or whatever, like that you're not just really going to push for what you want, or if you just don't know what you want, it's very easy for other people to dissuade you from having that conversation or from getting what you want. So I think the first thing is to really, and I mean, it's like what I was saying, is to really just get clarity on what it is that you want and what it is that that excites you. And in today's world, we have so much media and so many ways that you can actually get information about different kinds of sexual practices and desires, that that's a really great way to just start to do some research, and masturbate. And, just like be like, okay, what excites me? I used to, when I was younger, and I was out in the world and dating with people, and, I would always feel like, and, every time I would meet somebody, it would be very early on where they would be like, oh, let me try to kiss you, after like 5 minutes of knowing them. And I'm sure we've all had that experience. And, and a lot of times I would give in because I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. But then I started to get to the point like when I really started to look at my own desires, I made it a practice with myself to like really just like sit with like, what do I want from this person? And imagine myself kissing them. And if the thought of kissing them didn't like excite me and get me going, oh my God, I really want to do that. Or if I felt like if I leave and go home, I'm going to wish that I kissed this person, that would be the only time I would do it. I stopped doing it just because like, well, they want it and it's here and it's now, and so that was a really good way of just like being able to really kind of explore what is it that I really, really want, and then it was like, okay, now can I imagine myself being naked with this person and how does that feel, so just taking it like piece by piece in my mind before I ever let it get to any kind of experience going any place deeper.
It's funny how that is probably the most authentic answer you'll get around connection. When you say, okay, if I can just hold that thought, what do I really feel about that moment? You know, because
Yeah.
that person isn't present. I don't have the pressure. It's just me checking in with me on how I genuinely may feel in that moment. And I think it's one of the most honest opportunities we could have around attraction and beyond. You know, it's the beyond part that we usually get stuck with.
Yes.
You know, because we weigh so much on what we say or what we think that person's gonna perceive or what we think we can get
Yeah.
a lot of times, if we're real.
Or if any of it will be, we'll be single for longer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we treat some of the relationships like it's a bargaining tool for our self worth. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I haven't gotten a phone number in so many months, and this person's interested in me. I might as well, you know, go on this date or kiss this person or go ahead and have sex or whatever because I know when I get another date, you know, those are the
Yeah.
things that we do.
Oof, the mine as well dates. I mean, that's a tough one, and I can't say that I haven't been there. I'm sure that many of us have. I want to just acknowledge the point that you made. Like, this is such a simple tool. This taking a second to imagine. It's like I forgot the benefit of fantasy.
Yes.
You know, like when I was a teenager, just to sit and daydream about a cute somebody it was wonderful. And as an adult, I feel ashamed. Like, I don't want to have those girlish, like, I don't want to have a crush. Like, I'm beyond that.
Wait a minute.
And we may not want to, I call it,
Perform.
I totally identify with what you're saying because, I'll tell Melanie, like, you know what, this person is hot. But I don't know if I want to do anything about it. You know what I mean? Because just because you're attracted to someone doesn't mean you want to do something about it. So I make this joke, about like, do I want to perform? Like, I don't know if I want to perform.
But that's another thing too that actually brings up a whole other point because there is this pressure. Once you actually acknowledge that you have attraction to somebody, then there becomes this pressure, and I've felt like that too, where sometimes I'll be like, you know what, I'm feeling like I'm sort of interested in this person. I want to get to know them more, but I don't want to tell them, hey, I kind of like you and I'm interested in getting to know you because then it's going to become a thing.
Right.
And then I'm like, but maybe I'm not that attracted to you. Maybe I'm not ready to jump into bed with you. I'm just ready to start thinking about maybe holding your hand. And then maybe kissing you or something down the line. But it becomes this pressure and it becomes this whole thing. And that's why I feel like if we could find a way to just like alleviate that. And I used to always call it Spyce's rule of cash, which is basically just about like being more casual about our desires, about our relationships, that not everything is like this whole end all be all. Like, you meet somebody, you're attracted. Oh my God. Like now we're going to be together. It's like, you know what? I'm just trying to get to know you right now. I'm just trying to like find out more about you. And maybe down the road we'll become closer. Maybe we won't. But like, let's just have a conversation.
Sagittarius.
I have a Sagittarius rising.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do.
I feel sane right now. I had to rub my chest.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Gemini, but
Anyway, it makes
Yeah.
sense.
yes.
It makes sense.
And here we are with the twins.
Here we are.
Yep.
Right. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So what you're saying it's really powerful, and it reminds me, as I was coming up with the title for this episode, a good friend of mine was like, you should have just called it, All I Want for Christmas is Great Sex. And I was like, and I thought about it, and I was like, but that's not what the show is about. Like, not everybody wants great sex for Christmas. Like,
I don't know who doesn't, but
but
I feel you.
But But like exactly what Spice is saying, like let me pause and fantasize and think like maybe I want to, or like Melora, perform. Maybe I just want to think about it.
Mhm.
For me, it's like maybe I just want to cuddle, or like, there's so many different layers of intimacy and connection and relationship and concepts of pleasure that this idea that we're immediately going
Right.
to sex and intercourse as a first resort for intimacy is a breakdown in what true spiritual and human connection really is.
But you know what else you're getting at is it's not good enough. It's no longer good enough to just say sex. Sex doesn't equal good. You know what I mean? Like that's not good enough. Like to say all I want for Christmas is great sex. What is that?
Yeah.
Because
What does that
studies show
mean?
not a lot of people are having great sex unless they are really tapped in, connected, communicating, all these things we're talking about. So it has to go beyond what we just learned to say and repeat if we want a different experience of our sexual lives.
Yes.
And to be real, I mean, we'll be 42 on Thursday. If I'm blessed enough to live another 40, I would love to pick up some tools along the way.
Amen.
So that I'm not living into this world from, I want to say 20 years ago, where when you're old, you're washed up, you don't do. And now we're having other conversations about what it means to be sexually active as a senior. So all these tools, I'm like, yeah, let's get them all, honey.
Yes.
I think if we all bring it around, it can be a whole better world.
Yes, and I love what you're pointing to, because the question becomes, how do you define great sex? What is it? What does it mean? What does it look like for you, for your partner, and how do you create that together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I will say that I think one of the ways to like know that what you're having is great sex, it's really all about being present with the person, not like following this script of like, okay, this is what's supposed to happen. First you start kissing, then you start moving your hands down the body, then you
Left nipple,
it's like,
right nipple.
yeah, like that may or may not be exciting for a certain amount of time, but eventually that's always going to get boring. And it's so much more about just being in the moment with the person that you're with and having that connection. And then asking for what you want too in those moments, that's where there's some real power in it as well, because like I was saying when we first started this conversation, sometimes you just don't even know what you want. Sometimes you have to like explore in order to find out. I mean, I've had some of the best sex of my life with people that when I first met them, I was like, meh, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, once we got into a sexual space with each other, the whole vibe changed and everything about that person. Sometimes people even look different after you have like sex with them, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm just seeing you in this different way.
See you in a different light. Kind of light.
Exactly.
Oh, Lord.
So, it's just really wonderful to be able to be open to that. And so I feel like that's the thing that I would just want to remind people is to not let your fear and your shame get in the way of you just being open to being open with yourself and being open about your desires and being open with other people. And remember Spice's rule of cash and just say, you know what? Hey, you seem interesting. Let's hang out.
Yeah, I'm with that. We got like 2 minutes. What would you like to make sure comes through in this dialogue? And then I would love to have a part 2 of this, because I think this is a current we should keep flowing in order to get to all the other things that we want to in the ITCAST conversations. Because I think the more people are becoming open internally, we can unpack so much more.
Absolutely, absolutely. So definitely want to say thank you for having us here, and we will get that next episode and the part 2 of this worked out.
Yeah.
And Spice, please tell the listeners where they can find your work and what your services are, just to give us a taste.
Sure. Well, as we said before, I am a love empowerment coach specifically for strong women. So I work with women to look at and change their patterns in love to have healthy and sustainable relationships. I also work now with men as well to help them in the same way, because whether you're a man or a woman or whatever gender you identify as, everybody has things that they've been taught, and everybody has patterns that they live by that are probably not serving them that well. So that's how I help people. And I also work with couples to help them navigate all of those things as well. The best way to reach me is on my website, which is lovecleansing.com. And I'm also on social media, Spicy Spyce everywhere. And, for anybody who's listening now, if you contact me in the spirit of the holidays and in the spirit of asking for what you want, I'm offering a special deal for anyone who contacts me who's listening to this, that if you want to work with me, I want you to tell me what it is that you want, and what it is, how it is that you want to work with me, and even what it is that you want to pay. So, and we'll figure out the details from there. But that's my thought for the evening. So I wish everybody the power to ask for what you want, get what you want, and have an amazing, wonderful sex life and love life.
Beautiful.
Thank you for your generosity. So you can find out more about Spyce and add some spice to your holidays at lovecleansing.com. Find out more about the ItCast on Facebook, and now find us on YouTube. Please subscribe. You can also find more at nikashirelles.com and visit our Patreon, patreon.com/nikashirelles. Thank you, and join us next month.
Yes. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us inside the Veggie Lounge with Melanie and Melora Green. This will be our last show for the year, and we look forward to getting back with you all in the new year. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for just loving on our guests and supporting all the wonderful events and things that are happening. Thank you to all those listeners who've been contributing to our fall fundraiser for KPOO. Again, donations are tax deductible, and you can make donations at kpoo.com. I think that's all for us. Don't forget to visit the Don't Shoot, an opus of the Opulence of Blackness at the Museum of the African Diaspora. The show runs through March 1st, 2020. And also don't forget to visit the African American Art and Culture Complex website, aAACC.org. Creative co-working space coming up in the new year. Lots more.
Stop by.
Horizon come through, say hi, and let people know about KPOO. The next voice you will hear is Mr. Terry Collins with The Spirit of Joe Rudolph. Thank you so much, Terry, for what you do. All right, we'll see y'all in the new year. Happy holidays.
Happy
Love on
holidays.
somebody. Call somebody you have not called in a very long time. All right. You're inside the Veggie Lounge with Melanie Melora Green, KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM.